Hello, locations, areas, and states of the human volume, science, volume slash S, where and how. One identity of volume, that is all things at once, is making more of itself per its own system. But this is a system that requires uses of truths that are true always, not denying the slightest exceptions, not the value of the slightest exceptions denied. And this comes with means to answer. This comes with means out of nowhere. Are revealed out of nowhere. So this is a video regarding. This is live stream regarding the Bible, the Old Testament, distinctly, non-distinctly, because of what's said at the beginning of the Old Testament that has been left out and is increasingly obfuscated. Same thing with the beginning of the Quran. The Quran, the Constitution, and the Old Testament. The Old Testament, the Quran, and the Constitution were written with consciousness that at all identities, at all identity to the ground locations, that they were gonna that and how they were gonna remain styles of collusion syntactically, as therefore syntactically styles of logic, and as nature, as criminal insidiousness nature, as uses of the timing of instances where and how actually we are relation slash hyper relation in relative ways. This is where value is nature distinctly from how nature is value, and then distinctly from how grouped with those two distinct volumes where value is nature slash nature is value is relevant. And this is where and how more of the identity of volume that makes more of itself observably through temporary space nature. It is making more of what is some things constantly, and it is some things variably. But this is also where and how English and other languages were revealed to teach where and how what is variable comes with what is especially different. It comes with a special difference, the relativity of special difference. And it comes with the identity of hyperrelativity that we don't have to agree on the name of, but we have to agree that it exists or not, and that if we're going to call it the name Allah or not, relative also to multi-front, where consciousness behind the writing of the Quran and writing of the Old Testament knew that everyone would leave out and not even realize about what was said right up front with these books and the value of that. And they would increasingly value knowledge more of the rest of the books as styles of logic and as natures, as criminal insidiousness. Know how criminal insidiousness we know could be criminally legalized by a breaching method that could effectively have everyone blame other things, others, or ourselves for that. It's recorded how they motivated that. It's recorded how simultaneously, too, they assigned it to uses by what is way worse. So effectively, the theater of instances, how they actually unfold between ourselves. And when we perceive things, people standing next to when we perceive instances, let alone with reality television, as contracted that way, as left contracted that way. And the rest, see, WFSB has roles. They attach me to fake words, distinctly from, and fake conversations, fake ties to the people, fake natures of ties to the people. I'm not the only one they've done this to. And if someone tries to counter it, they attach that person more and more to fake words also with everyone around us. Then they exploit the phenomenon of where and how they bring up subjects and instances, interbranch names, where and how recorded consciously they have roles with criminally foreign influenced readings of statutes. For example, that give themselves the benefit of the doubt at the last second regarding not just who's telling a lie or not, regarding the relativity of it. Because the more and more the three branches of government use lies for truths and truths to screen lies and to pull them off, ones that are also predicate acts, whole predicate acts methods simultaneously. And at those locations in relevant things that's relevant at other locations simultaneously. The beginning of the Old Testament says we're supposed to write about this part that came before, where parsing is being done at the beginning of the Old Testament of what is good and what is not, and where more good can be made hyperaditionally from what is already an identity of relativity than positive and negative simultaneously. This is the real reason why values with math are relative to positive and negative simultaneously. This is the real reason the XY coordinate system is value to math, but is also ways not as significant and from this course. So the Quran, the beginning of the Quran says the people of Islam are supposed to love the people that are not Muslims. And the people that are Muslims, all they have to do to be a Muslim is to agree to call their identity the hyper-simultaneous Allah. And if that person, for the slightest reason, discerns needs not to, discerns that it would not be good to, or not proper to pray in a mosque, not as a means to insult the mosque, to know. But you know the words. They're not supposed to pray in that mosque. It says all they have to do is that at the beginning of the Quran. So, for example, where the topics of Arabic dress, who eats pork, and things like that come up, you have styles of logic that are affected by a child abuse method that knew that for all formal identities of logic would have to counter things like criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments and negative treatments by strangers in all exceptions against themselves, while increasingly against others, as needs and natures and styles of syntax. Syntactically manifest can't defend that and afford discernment of all that connected to any voice using short words properly. And as that, in other words, so when people say this campus is doing bad things, they're going to change that person's word. They're going to, in other words, if you call up a camp, they have, this is relative to all kinds of topics in the news. MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN have roles with the federal, with various natures of police forms and their difference used to obfuscate, in other words, styles. If I was trying to hurt them, I wouldn't warn them. This is coming. See, but they're juxtaposed with the people who hear that and how someone's going to speak about how their names were applied increasingly with all crimes at all crime scenes as roles because of how effectively also roles is not just that breaching method that was never unhinged through other apparent motivations. Those are all juxtaposed apart with this, the screen itself. That which, in other words, the sciences became abridged from their state before they became self-valued, criminally foreign influence, tactically criminally foreign influence, / hyper-tactically criminally foreign influence. And where everyone didn't want and wouldn't want the ancients and semi-ancients couldn't fathom that anyone could forget or miss the demonstrations of the way nature communicates answers to us and how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts in nature's means out of nowhere. Our founders couldn't fathom how we would have such engineering and infrastructural means, yet self-value, suburbs tactically denatured, a part of a slavery/torture method, sickly distinctly against our founding parents, a method using database relationships, using all locations, using the quote, sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, of humanity, to use a woman's phrase. Now, one of the ways they do this is by keeping women from leaving out details, making them self-value details where everyone's being attached to fake conversations with ourselves and others. And relevant, there are consciously, criminally foreign influence uses, instances, treatments, civil and private, and the grouped increasingly where overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of people A through Z, and the people at the interbranch campuses locations A through Z, contributing roles to predicate acts, illusions in private cases and in civil cases, and with war treatments, all natures of law treatments, all natures of the nature of the law treatments, all identity treatments. Where and how opinions are made regarding what problems cause shootings and other natures of phenomena in New York City, sickly distinctly from Hartford, Connecticut. It is also recorded how sickly non-distinctly conscious roles by individuals, conscious roles with methods more than there are, with predicate acts more than there are streets in our cities, single individuals have. And they have family members and people around them. And this is with motivations other than our apparent. For example, regarding money roles and things like that. So there were a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital 3 times, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are judges and prosecutors and judges and police forms, and their patients and criminals have crimes with areas and against innocent people increasingly self-valuing the worst natures of crimes to hide lie progressions and illusions and uses of identity ground locations for themselves and all around them. Relative to this, I couldn't believe that people wouldn't be allowed to tell on child offenders how they could get away with not, with lying after the person tried and then they were denied. They're lying about the motives after that too. They have wire crime acts and methods and uses of the databases at the campuses that are simultaneously private database relationships that have nothing to do with this. Areas of overt criminal enterprises memories where they haven't had roles or uses of people's names with insidiousness of people A through Z, or they attach that person and everyone around them to fake words with themselves and with other, fake ties to other, fake natures of ties to other. Since founding, our founders left us to demonstrate about how all investigations, investigators, and perception had been employed by a breaching method that had been already also sustained and caused to a whole bunch of things that had also been themselves effectively employed as a means to have blamed on other things, others, or ourselves, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and as a means to propagate them more and more while self-valuing I mean, while simultaneously having that self valued, so therefore self cultivated, where and how also self value works, the self, how it really works. We are these three distinct identities of sciences: individual, grouped, and species body of volume sciences slash science. That is one. But three, they come with the value of that which already came true, which really was true though, before the order of the finite now, before the smallest finite detail in the acceptation of the republic for which we stand right now, before them all their grouped identities of identity of relationship to itself that the republic has now, and before they were conceived, only capable of speculation into that which is to come, of nature as that which is to come, tactical ulterior from what could afford what we could know now about what is to come, what we know now. Our founders left us to demonstrate how they were. Our founders were Native Americans, and our founders who had to hide their roles, semi counter extorting, only capable of semi counter extorting their other founders, let alone everyone else, to force them not just to fake it until we could make it, to use the expression. I don't know who made that phrase. I heard it a bunch of times through the networks. But they also have roles with attaching me to fake words and with the thefts of my words and at crime scenes and pretending it's personal when we respond to this. They have whole wire crime methods with the phones and with the broadcasts relative to if there are ties with a Fred Grouze to the FBI in New Haven. And even if they made, of course, they probably there are proofs that they made it up about if they didn't make it up, especially differentially, about someone being chopped up with a sword about maybe 8 years ago or 6 years ago or less in New Haven, near Yale, near New Haven. And if a Spider family does, because these are families with judges and prosecutors that were a certain type of victim / hyper victim, where if you bring up people's names, they're gonna have the illusion of in other words, you have to bring up the courts and the police forms, because these are also people who roles with the Wethersfield police. The names they brought up, they didn't bring up the name Spada, but they brought up the name Cololo. And in collusion with having influenced them and others to plant evidences, to say things so time could be used criminally in other interbranch locations through time, along roads and routes. One of the things this is sickly distinctly against every individual voice. It's an identity theft / fraud / slander method that cannot help but be manifest that way. Many pray. So so they have kids using other kids' names and have them verifying things they heard through investigations and investigators, but where they don't want to do it that way. And simultaneously, the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of logic of styles of people A through Z. It is manifest as styles that can't defend themselves and afford the revelations of people's short words when they say that. In other words, when they're using truths that are true always, not denying the slightest exception, not valuing the slightest exception denied, and not using them to have exception nature denied. And this being relevant where and how the identity of hyper relativity / relativity is relative to us. distinctly as an individual, simultaneously, while we are locations, areas, ages, sexes, while just non-distinctly. And so it is an identity of relationship to Alpha and to Omega, as it is an inherent state, distinctly from its active state, distinctly from its progressive state of conjunction to itself. The identity not only of that which is everything at once individually grouped in together, but this identity, that is how it is actually manifested, demonstrates how it is. It is the hyper invisible identity of volume as the only increasing value of the what really truly truthfully came first sequentially before the order now. For example, again, as the order of the finite of the republic for which we stand, what really came first true, what really came true first is that and how the republic became criminally foreign influenced and rolls with that. And nature defended as styles of logic that way. They could no longer afford discerned use of you all that is conjunctive slash hyperconjunctive to where and to how to. Anytime someone uses short words, using what is true always, not denying the slightest exceptions, etc. That nature of truth, not using it for lies, not using it to screen lies, pretending you can't fathom it. It is that quality of scientific inquiry, and that, in other words, that has meanings, that reveals evolutions, fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. You don't make negotiations relative to wars. You make negotiations relative to the identity of negative value nature progression that self-valued roles with modern countries A through Z had and have. And where they have them now, they are increasingly styles of logic, increasingly self-valuing. The past having stayed collusions, plural, against our founders, for example, here and there, in our faces, pretending for other motivations, nature's needs, interests. This is also relevant where and how the short words grouped and together of the sciences, they're involved with criminally foreign influence, positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments that are also simultaneously collusion slash S. Also relevant where forgiveness is not to give up, but it is not to allow people to blame others or ourselves, leaving out exceptions and leaving out the breaching methods, involvements with the criminal insidiousness, collusions, including interbranch, witch trials, and what they blamed them on are proofs. Our founders left us to demonstrate how all identity grounds, names, were collusions with criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments that were simultaneously collusions, not just with value treatments, manifest the same way for this. This employed only criminal insidious natures of means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures relative to the increasing critical means to discern that which is actually hyper evidentially recorded, where and how the suburbs were tactically denatured, apart with that slavery slash torture method that was sustained, also where and how propagated, where all that was causing was employed members, everyone's forced role to entertain such, blaming other things on others ourselves, where increasingly it knew the functions of the three branches of government as they are actually manifest. See, it needs the republic and the campuses systems. These are fire campuses and our medical campuses. Consciously, to an extent only. They're agencies, including ones with badges. They have a whole bunch of drugs and medicines crimes against elderly and crime methods, predicate acts methods against elderly, against kids, and against anyone tied to the locations they use, like elderly homes. This is how a certain type of victim predator was employed to speak about economy, to speak about their own names, other people's names, to speak about their opinions, leaving out the significance of the breaching method. Now, these are people increasingly valuing having been all locations where we are going to walk and be. They're stacking in predicate acts illusions that are used also at other locations. And this is also relative to where and to how each individual is shown means, needs, and natures to blame on other things, others, ourselves. All the revelations that come from having black pupils. Yeah. And whites of eyes. And to hear, in other words, we have the experts, the people with the most knowledge of the subjects. And we have overt criminal enterprises, private ones. And we have ignorance, recorded self-valued roles as styles of logic as an array that are also simultaneously increasingly natures and styles of logic, attaching complete strangers to changed words, to faked words, fake locations, fake ties to other people, fake ties to the people around them, fake natures of ties, fake significance when they make instances, treatments, everywhere formally and informally. So we have to, in other words, value how they left this out. They have employed where and how they pretended had people have religious rights, and they attach us to fake conversations with themselves, formally into databases about religions. And increasingly, those are names and uses of them at other locations where the relevance of that comes up, where the sense and sensibilities of the church and other religious locations that are still offensively predators against anyone who's going to speak about, against everyone. And this effectively has each age of fact, treatment, nature, self-value. What everyone wants to counter can't self-value at the same time. No, everyone wants to leave out the significance of where and how the branches of government, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, hundreds of nations shared on and off campuses together, insidiousness of people A through Z, killers, people on and off body dumping spots, on and off investigations, all crime scenes. Locked more and more, kept needing to hide the same finite illusions, value that haven't been, therefore as collusions. There are collusions with our campuses from off campuses made at other locations for us. And for the people that you're going to blame it on, even when correctly. Otherwise, with them changing your words, even if you do it perfectly, with them attaching you to fake conversations with themselves into databases. This is what most has the furtherance of all kinds of uses of fentanyl problems and other chemical, even if I've never even seen fentanyl, even if they made it up because of their what they are using those locations for, having used those locations for. So a whole bunch of people with the intelligence community associated with courts and the medical community associated with the military also at spots in New Britain and West Hartford, next to campuses, next to fire campuses, next to elementary schools, next to colleges. There are also recorded roles with names, times, with fact, nature-oriented predicate acts on and off those campuses, including ones totally made up, where and how recorded relevant are recorded consciously remotely used time treatments criminally foreign influenced, where time treatments are used simultaneously too fast and too slow to get over on each individual's voice and nature and location and identity of relativity. Everyone's, including their own and their kids, while they need to pretend other too. For the breaching method needs to increasingly screen itself, increasingly being demonstrated to ourselves, and as an increasingly valuable answer where questions are naturally stemming from what things cause slavery. This is how to answer those questions. What things could motivate someone to deny that, and how? New York City, the suburbs are still designed since before our founding parents were born, with slavery employed north and south, sickly distinctly, effectively to keep how sickly not distinctly from being discerned. And that's where and how discernment of that is means to cause and to unite behind hyper peace. See, we have only known criminal insidiousness natures of peace and war since them ancient times. Criminal insidiousness natures of passions and emotions speaking for the Quran and or for the Bible. Criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments simultaneously. They want to speak for passion, leaving out the order of the finite, leaving out the value of truth, what really came truth first, before the word of the finite now. Because that's how we discern. It's invisible, but still discernible, the hyper simultaneous. It is inseparable from these five identities of order, distinct identities of order. And where they are non-distinct, there are three. Where and how they are differentially, increasingly, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneously making more, and how they are making more of itself, the identity of the hyper simultaneous, and its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, which is also relative to why and to how. The top of the Z points back towards A, and the bottom of the Z points away. Leaf of high D's, more probably and demonstrably, increasingly, more probably defined as a negative identity of relationship to itself. That the identity that can't help but be everywhere at once as its identity, anything that is its own. And this is where and how a special difference is coupled, with every other identity of volume, and between it, and between all parts of that volume, every individual. See, there was the Yale website, Yale University has a picture of Jesus Christ with A on the left side of his head and W on the right side. And then after W comes XYZ. This is also relevant to where tactically, consciously, the hyperarchetypal criminal enterprise method, singular. Again, it propagated effectively self-cultivated roles with a whole bunch, increasingly plural, ulterior natures of criminal insidiousness, kept needing time increasingly to hide the same finite, active, progressive lives, including preemptively, actively, increasingly at the same time, relative to where and how we are manifest as the Trinity, while simultaneously, that same way, with the value of sequence, what really came true before this, and what is to come, distinct from this, well, non-distinct from this, as 5 distinct identities of order. These are 5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. Each one of them, too. The parts of itself are 5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. Simultaneously as 3. Apart with this demonstration of where and how one identity of value progression is making more of its identity of forever nature through all other identities of temporary / lasting forever nature, individually grouped and together. Only the value we are together stays. But only the value we are as an individual stays distinctly too. See, the way they have how we are individuals and they have how we are grouped, humanity, syntactically applied, criminal and seditious natures of future positive negative treatments, identity theft, identity treatments. The names, therefore, names of locations, areas, ages. They have these themes. The year before I came into the high school, it was reported that it was the last year they had cigarettes smoked on campuses. Now, the Institute of Living then, and unceasingly, they had roles attaching little kids to fake locations. They had roles with various natures of police forms. They have a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, who's one of the ones playing these games with WFSB and the names next to them, who have roles with dozens of falsified police reports, not just against me, but just against me through time that have connections between them and uses of that. Now, there are also people on the child offender registry that had roles with other natures of organized crime and identity thefts and frauds and illusions, wire crimes with the campuses. I caught a principal child abuser before he was caught, involved with other natures of federal crimes, and those same natures of ones with people online too, interbranch. They're pretending a lot of passions and emotions regarding what they see online. They're self-valuing roles with collusions with that, with people against people they don't even know. Oh, but I saw that. I would never write something like that. Meanwhile, they're in the backgrounds involved with predicate acts methods, preventing mandated law, and planting illusions, planting evidences where increasingly the branches of government, the other countries, overt criminal enterprise and insidiousness of people A through Z is hid behind more effectively than our founders hid behind the ongoing resistance then and now, because still needed, of Native Americans to where into how they assigned their identity as the Republic Abridged. It was the honest grouping of humanity before humanity started following how we are grouped other, started valuing that, how we are grouped other. That was simultaneously valuing. We can't afford increasingly discern how English and other languages were revealed to teach what identity is used for, relative to positive and negative simultaneously, the same way, and simultaneously distinctly from how value is. So there is this identity of hyper-simultaneous that has our species, even plant life, manifest cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, cell walls, sharing the body of value coming through as what it cannot be, as air that is not already itself, and as water and the elements, but they're increasingly provided to it. If it stays on its system, where everyone is it. And say, we have ourselves. It's all right if people want to say, "Oh, it's not our fault." Then don't speak when someone else brings up serious things. Don't get involved in the thing. Pretend you keep it real. Yeah. We're going to use passions and emotions about the simultaneous, hyper simultaneous. You guys are preventing this. You guys are sick when you bring up the age of fact, cheap in nature. You make sure you get on paper and stop speaking for the religions too, religious spots. Make sure I get a response for the people associated with who had conversations with police. They use my name. Make sure I get and integrate. They've been switching names. I couldn't believe there would be problems with child, let alone with on campus. But other ways we know from grammar school when we're young, that and how they can't afford to discern all that we know when we hear them speak of everything black and white. We have black pupils, whites of eyes. But see, what we miss is where and how they have the identities of law shown. They cannot afford discern what little kids could discern and explain. Not so they keep it relative to people's feelings being hurt and things like that. Passions, emotions, treatments that are not about simultaneous. They're not going to go into the fine ideal exceptions. They're making fake exceptions in exception nature. They have employed uses of where and how people speak with each other and see each other, hear each other's first name that are effectively relevant where and how themselves they don't understand how they got and stayed. Logic, entertaining. The suburbs the way they are, let alone New York City, Hartford, Connecticut. Sickly distinctly. Wethersfield is a suburb. Hartford is a suburb / urban / suburban. And New York City is straight urban. Yeah. We have not even addressed the tactically denatured grounds identity of relationship to itself. That where and how to employ where that was nature is going to they knew nature was going to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures as a negative and a hyper additional negative identity of relationship to itself, hyper relative. Hyper relativity is before our faces. Here. It is these 5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature, and how each one is a trinity as a distinct identity of volume, where value is nature / nature is value. Hyper conversely, it is how the hyper simultaneous makes more of itself. Vaccines. But we have to be heard to speak these things. So the intelligence community has been influencing social media to discredit people, and they have been using all exceptions and exception nature to get away with it, valued as roles with criminally foreign influence uses of those exception nature. Also, where and how effectively, tactically applied is the array and the illusion of difference between the best education and speakers and the worst ones. And the difference between it, effectively employed roles, needs, and natures, effectively, preemptively, increasingly styles of logic, actively, increasingly styles of logic and of passions and emotions, A, therefore B narratives that are grouped, leveraged against any individual voice that is going to use short words properly. They're actually inherent active progressive means. This is stronger than all things of space / existence individually grouped and together. And where is that? To make more of the value, not just of that, but of what can't be that, and make more of itself without being that in itself distinctly, not distinctly, and hyper simultaneously. This is what we are observing with the extent we have and with the extent we are of the hyper simultaneous. Even though it is the smallest extent of all things, its complete identity of relationship to itself is simultaneously increasingly with that, value with that. And so is the value of that. These are three distinct ways it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible. The languages were revealed differently because of how they were revealed more than they were invented, in demonstration of why the same reason we have different color eyes and not. They're dealing with the predicate. I mean, they were dealing with the verb and the verb's identity of relationship to itself. The subject's identity of relationship to itself, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneously. It is positive to itself, where and how it is distinct identities is a sequence nature. It is positive to itself simultaneously or not. We're automatically temporary positive, but there is such a thing as criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments. And that entertainment can't afford the revelations or even the discernment of that which is actually reality. Now, this is we use reality. We have because we only have an extent of it. We have reality's reality, though, and the only increasing value of that, because every extent has its complete identity of relationship to itself, only increasingly valuable. And the value of that together simultaneously only increasingly valuable. Logic that denies the significance of how the Native American identity, as everyone's, was applied by that breaching method, sickly distinctly before our founders are born, during how they were born, and now. Those are three different ways, consciously, and phases of attaching the Native American identity as a word, as our species body of volume, entertaining fact treatments, time treatments, quality treatments, nature treatments that can't entertain themselves and afford what nature tells us how to summarize history properly, how to summarize that which is active now properly, and what is to come. It takes less, and you can create more energy and save more energy dropping water than it takes to lift water. We still have self-value. Roles entertained below our feet, which we cannot entertain, and defend ourselves as fact keeping nature simultaneously. Increasingly, this effectively knew that modern countries A through Z would have to counter things like criminal insidiousness, like criminal foreign influences, by blaming the other countries in A through Z, exactly the way it wanted and needs, leaving itself out of the equation, out of the calculuses, abridged. Employ the bridge to pretend other breaching screens, tools, weapons, worse. Let's all rehearse. Follow mandated law for Connecticut and Wethersfield into branch. They switch names. I play no games. They are sickly. They play this. They have the sense and sensibilities of boys and girls, of men and women, sickly distinctly, where they can be real fakes with instances treatments, where everyone stays little fakes with the breaching method that prevents the course of black pupils here. We must now tell. It's native pure, hyper native pure. So they assigned the hyper native identity and memory of their and means to hold on to their memory of what nature had already shown humanity to understand itself. It's trying to show us. When we ignore it, it is forcing lethal hadis, which is distinct from death. Death and the value of death and life are simultaneous. For how this hyper simultaneous is in demonstration to us. The word extremism was and is effectively recorded having been involved with preemptive plots, then in the World Trade Center context and the ones next to it, through other apparent motivations, nature's needs of interest, but also relative to where remotely, since they were kids, they were used remotely, kept needing to hide relevant collusions, where how at all of our campuses, fake things are being perceived, and with delusions, and that is involved predicate acts roles, predicate acts methods roles are being self-valued. So rather than value honestly what is said right at the beginning of the Quran and right at the beginning of the Old Testament, they have used through generations the people who know most about the books that as a means to screen where and how they have criminal insidiousness, positive and negative treatments, identity treatments that can and natures that cannot defend themselves and afford properly used short words by others. So I want a name for I want a response for the fake conversations they attached me to with the principal child defender, and how they hid that by fabricating audio and video transcripts of Wethersfield police, Rocky Hill police families, Newington police families, people associated intercities on off campuses, other police forms, people with West Hartford schools, New Britain schools, where they live. And then pretending passionate more, they're pretending I brought this up. All exception nature and demonstration is the same thing. You have to have follow mandated law and or get me a name and or say get him a name. Start the snowball. And I'll show you because there are more World Trade Center attack predicate acts and sequence shifts into branch databases and roles with the ones associated with the investigators of it. Also relevant where and how effectively all these countries are kept fake sides with the intelligence community. Each age of their families kept needing to hide lipoaggressions, need to self-value with little illusions shown to them timed, where and how we're going to use each other's names. Where and how perception is actually, where and how we are a value/value progression along roads and routes and relative to corners and relative to the ground features and aspects in nature, where and how the suburbs were involved with slavery, north and south, sickly distinctly, effectively right through our schools, still blamed on other things, others ourselves. Yeah. This is relevant to subject streams where the departments have been used criminally for and influenced at Central Connecticut State University through time, where their identity is recorded being and having been exploited at other identity of campuses locations. And they've got away with that also deferentially. The other campuses have roles with this, increasing with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and self-valued uses of illusions at crime scenes, all natures of them, not by accident. This is effective. It's a little simple method. What do you think is going to happen when you deny what little kids can explain? They are prevented sickly distinctly. Those short words, adults are still prevented them the way you could describe it, where kids would understand it. Kids would understand what criminal insidiousness is. Criminal insidiousness is positive treatments, negative treatments, identity treatments. So we have identity experts that are criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions wrought, and roles with federal evidences, predicate acts, methods, and natures, drugs crimes, medicines crimes, roles with as predicate acts, methods that also effectively employed originally and still. The only identity around ground locations capable of countering things associated with that. Where and how that's just one of the many things employed criminally for an influence. And increasingly, they have roles with it. They still, you have to follow mandated law for your branch of the government, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of people A through Z. Let's get it done. Let's get someone on paper, on sequence, and true. So WFSB, please follow mandated law. I'm asking you here because the Wethersfield police have wire crime methods where they fabricate audio and video transcripts with state police families and with FBI families, and at the same houses involved with forensics locations with them through lifetimes criminally and recorded means to observe this as with that which is actually recorded. So, in other words, we also have means with this to put a hyper economy in place. Hyper economic means, you know, the suburbs were designed before cars were even around with slavery for designed to cause they designed native the identity of the grounds, identity of relationship to itself, designed to cause negative value in each progressions, acts, and natures, designed to simultaneously make self-valued roles with criminal insidiousness natures of means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Only if they're going to be criminal insidiousness natures of positive values and natures and things and times, instances, collusions, uses. That means identity uses simultaneously. Syntactically, that means values uses, increasingly incapable of affording use. Excuse me. Syntactically, the phenomena of how the hypersimultaneous is discernible as an identity of volume distinctly from where how is discernible as identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. In other words, extinctions show that our systems are tactically ulterior than its own means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. The plastic value in this going into the ocean and breaking down because it's already there. If you stop that, why you're syntactically self-valuing roles with that? The people, are you syntactically self-valuing? How all this plastic was even there? It's already there. It's already getting smaller, breaking down. Even if that was not true, fresh water is completely shot. It's gone. Denature means, in other words, rather than cultivate the things we love and need. Everything came through systems tactically ulterior from its own. Effectively, to be methods tactically ulterior from nature's own and only capable of blaming other things, others, ourselves. Only capable of discerning the difference of a country or of a self through contrast, not through correlation. So people, America, I wouldn't want to be in other country. But what do? They saying that. Meanwhile, we don't want that. That's what keeps wars. People here, we don't even, the other countries think our country had roles with slavery, with this white and black narrative, leaving out the native one. No, leaving out how it is actually. Anyone who understands a computer knows how identity works and knows what's going on here. They're leaving that out. They're leaving out how there are other motivations than economic ones there. Everyone, there's a certain type of victim that everyone is from when you were kids. Where and how they've been telling us American history tactically wrong. Right through our schools maintained, all locations, from off them. That's why we have to understand, because all that's manifest with that. That's to screen this. Singular method. Complete possession over all identities of students of high sophistication. slash non-sophistication and counters to it, collusions, is immediately apparent when we use the hyper evidential. And how the evidential use is so sick, got away with pretending others so long. So make sure, because they have the phones at the campuses also involved with this game and with the names that are associated with campuses in the past in relative ways. They're putting kids that don't even go to the same campuses together. And then they're making the deal like a Sergio Bajerio. I'm pretty sure he didn't go to my campus. I don't know what campus he went to, in elementary school. But now he's associated with elementary school, other campuses in town through time, with men and women attaching kids to fake locations, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people, also with courts, family members, and other agencies, and judges, their family members. I mean, mayors, all that. In other words, there is no difference that they're going to hide behind with these criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that are also with them with other nations. There were neighbors of a Tom Pruda. I never had a conversation with my life. They try to make an illusion of other. They do little tricks with the corners of the streets along Route 3, where they have people associated also where a girl was reportedly dragged to her death. Real or made up, that girl, and people associated with her before that. She was dragged to her death on Jordan Lane in Wethersfield, near where there used to be a school for deaf kids. There's a kid and his brother that lived next to a Tom Peruta near the corner of Grizzle Street and Route 3, and he had a pink car he made that he had been influenced by men and women to make confessions or make it look like I know him, and show me that pink car. No, that was the only time I ever know him. Someone else made it look like I know him, made a fake exception. These are people involved with the Joshua Julian I don't know at all. It was behind my back through time, having people repeat his name to me. So it would sound so good. He was pretending I know. He was one of the ones that were involved where they're attaching little kids to fake locations, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. Investigators, and all perception was used criminally foreign influence leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, leading up to all instances that led up to world wars in those contexts and since, and the counters to it. Effectively, they have counters to the Nazi roles with the world wars, where and how they still have collusions with psychiatry, with the medical locations, and with all exception nature tied to the three branches of government. They've been stacking fake things into databases. They've been roles with drugs and medicines crimes, with psychiatry, with courts, with all the places tied to them, with medical locations, with the agencies, with plainclothes police, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones juxtaposed, with their passions and emotions when they pretend to care about the identity of the police, the identity of service people. They're leaving out exception nature where they're criminally foreign influence. They don't really care where it counts. And on time is where it counts most. The real causes of negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures originally and still are effectively blamed on other things, others, ourselves. Right through other things manifest relative to this. You have little kids committing crimes because it's better to have the fake nature of relationship to themselves and uses of that with the kids next to them by people from off the locations, countered that way. Make them describe it formally. You get them on paper. And we're going to start getting more locations involved because if you don't get on paper quick, you better hide Connecticut. And I want to know, too, who knows this Chet Casper, Wethersfield, Connecticut? There's a Chet Casper. I want to know what his sister's name is too. She's one of the ones, and his father. A whole bunch of people tied to them involved with the Debbie Gold, and people with on the child offender registry involved with police forms in the Wethersfield Police Department through time involved with child offenses, including sexual, including women judges' roles. This is everyone speaking through each other, granted, but we're gonna come sweep the get them on paper. Get them on paper. We're going to talk about passions and emotions. You're going to understand this. Little fakes speaking about passions and emotions, keeping even wars going. And you guys speak about that. All the answers are right there, but you guys leaving out with the books because you're making everything complicated where it's not, where it's simple, and you're making simple things complicated where they're not. Relative to you guys are using simultaneously time treatment simultaneously, too fast, too slow to get over on what is actually proper. Time treatments with our forever nature, identity, humanity, vaccines. I teach us things but long. So Connecticut, Interbranch, New York City. Let's go. Let's get this. So WFSB, New York City. We're going to get them to respond to me. Fix the fake news. They've been putting things up and taking them down criminally too, simultaneously. They're obfuscating what they put fake, and the particular because if you want, it's your feelings. They're lying about our feelings and about their own feelings about the simultaneously. You guys are hurting me some ways, taking it down, and hurting me other ways, putting the fake conversations with me up and with people around me too. No, up. You attach little kids to fake ties and natures of ties to doctors and have roles with that. With drugs and medicines, crimes, with little kids, WFSB, with the people next to you, through time involved on off campuses, criminally foreign influence uses of the sense and sensibilities of the people around everyone, too, neighbors. You guys are sick people with Hartford, with Institute of Living, Hartford campuses, and other medical campuses. You guys better get this Leahy family that pretended conversations with me onto paper with the judges and prosecutors and lawyers criminally involved. Keep it personal. And I'll donate means to heal the damages they're going to cause now because of what you've stayed since founding. 1822, the Institute of Living was founded on the campus of Hartford Hospital, with slavery still entrenched north and south, relative to where and to how our founders had to counter-extort them through Wethersfield, Connecticut, had to leave entrenched too. Roles with slavery sickly distinctly north and south. Roles with slavery sickly distinctly in the north is what engineered cities such a sickly distinct insidious, overtly insidious slash, subtly insidious trap, torture method, tool, cause to negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures, hyper additional to the real one with it. Before the foundation of modern nations, individually grouped in together, a breaching method was cast more vast and more deep. And while everything else was cast, its method, singular, was building more methods, needs, and natures, hiding the same finite, active, progressive, as it is actually demonstrated. Here, I teach you law. Connecticut boxing. There are people associated with the FBI and state police forms, and maybe it's only training or whatever, but associated with plainclothes police and acting coaches, associated with John Scully and with a Johnny Callis, and people use my names with them behind my back. They attach me and my father to fake words. Now these are people involved with judges and prosecutors with the FBI director and his defendant capacities, and co-defendants of his and their family members, associated with conversations involving my name, and these people with Connecticut boxing gyms from Wethersfield, though, where Wethersfield interbranch locations and exception nature tied to them. They've been timing where we're going to go as collusions. With illusions, they've been stacking into databases and uses of it at other locations, uses of the kids, of the leaders of the schools, sickly distinctly from the uses of their parents, and grouped, effectively employed uses of it. So we have to get them on paper. Who disbelieves? There are more names recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed to me by the principal child abuser, like a Mr. Emmett, and there's a people with the name Levine, Mike Levine is also one, and there were a whole bunch of people associated with on and off Town Line Drive, in the corner of Town Line Drive and Saustine Highway, and other and the side entrances to it. It has something to do with all along Elm Street in Rocky Hill. People associated with John Maiano have roles with judges and prosecutors, and people with prisons in their campuses. They have roles with predicate acts methods, federal evidences crimes, on natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders instances, and styles, and natures of relevant where and how. This course got to bridge the black pupils, whites of eyes, and we have these little fakes with the cultural narratives. So John Maiano's got some interculturally themed and Italian themed, federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, timed criminally foreign influence uses of identity ground locations roles, sequence shifts roles, investigators use criminally foreign influence, interbranch locations. Make sure I get them. There was an officer, Jerry Miller, who brought up a Kerr, an officer, there was a Jerry Kerr. There were two Jerry Kerrs, and there's a Mike Kerr, brother of them. They have roles with the names at the corner of the street of Saustine Highway and Town Line Drive with the intelligence community with a whole bunch of other names. There was a Dominic Abate. He confirmed and demonstrated he's involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me with the intelligence community, locking little boys and girls. These are people on the child offender registry associated with families all along Route 3 with this, which goes by the state judicial branch offices. The state judicial branch offices and the FBI and state police and police departments and fire departments and overt criminal enterprises and private ones, people that involved with database and inter-campuses predicate acts. They have roles with that corner. And camp with Central Connecticut State University has roles intercities on off campuses with locations like that. Now, these are also names with spots next to the state capitol through time. So there's an officer, Jerry Miller, who's one of the ones on Facebook, also with Wethersfield Police Department. Whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Joshua Schumacher and his mother. I don't know them. They went out of their way to make fake exceptions pertaining to Nomi intercities with people in the intelligence community on and off Central Connecticut State University through time, all along Wells Road and between private and public campuses. They've been spreading identity theft, fraud, slanders, including with sheriffs and things like that involved. Criminally foreign influence uses of corners of streets, people's names, people tied to them. These are also some KKK themed and interreligious cliques themed fakes with passions and emotions and their uses of their own names and other people's names. These are also some military families forging and switching names. I'd get on paper fast. And I'd get this Finelli family that made a fake, they're recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by neighbors of theirs named DeMorals. And involved with them with natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, federal evidences crimes, other natures of child abuses. Roles with them, tied to the roles with the corner of Knott Street and Wells Road. Also with the names involved forging and switching names, wire crimes with Wethersfield Police with the years past and for increasingly. So we're going to get them on paper. They had fake conversations with me with a Mendez, whole bunch of people tied to an Eric Mendez involved on off New Britain Superior Court through time, fabricating fake ties and natures of ties to me with this kid and with child sexual circles involved with medical community as the ones personally and professionally involved with the judges of various natures of courts at crime scenes and at those courts and with civil locations and depositions where they're keeping things that wrong outcomes in cases because they're using everything that comes before them to hide life progressions as they were used as effectively as a certain type of child abuse victim predator slash hyper victim hyper predator. So effectively since they were kids and the adults in their family collusions with this fake things. So let's get them on paper. Here. Vaccines. The needs appear. Vaccines.